Singapore for Token 2049, and today I'm with Kevin, also known as Intern from Monad.
How we doing?
Welcome. I feel like people know you on the internet from mostly your tweets, but there's no backstory. So can you walk us through how you got into the industry and what sort of captivated your attention?
Yeah. So I initially got into crypto in like summer of 2017, right after my freshman year of college. I was studying physics and econ. Um, there's not a lot of things to do with physics after you graduate, right? You can either teach physics um, or like work in a lab, but that's pretty much it. And so I found crypto. It aligned with a lot of the things that I believed in, I thought was important, would probably become more relevant over the next 10 years. So knew I wanted to work in the industry. And then there were not, there's not like a path to going to work in crypto, or at least in 2017, right? There's basically companies that exist, but there's no like, oh, go get an internship 10 months before summer and then everything is set up.
Right. It was
the
mostly developer focused back then.
Yeah, there was like Coinbase existed, and that was generally how people onboarded. Now there's actually kind of a path to working in crypto, right? You can go and find a company that's 200, 300 people, get an entry level role, and then work from there. But at this point, they're just like the industry wasn't built out enough to like have a direct path. And so my idea was like, all right, if that, like people obviously do work in this industry, the best way to find a role is pretty much to talk to the people that already do, hopefully make enough connections, show excitement, ambition, like drive to want to work in it, and then hopefully they can hook you up with something. And so I pretty much tried to talk to everyone I knew or had like a second degree connection with that worked in crypto. Um, Chatted with like all of them, probably 15 people total. And the idea was like, all right, upon graduation, one of them will be able to help me get a job.
What about the industry got your attention?
So I mean, Bitcoin was first, right? And when I initially started like buying Bitcoin and getting excited about it, like the SegWit fork was something that was in the headlines, people were talking about. And so I learned a lot about that and basically like fell down the rabbit hole, realized like, hey, this is actually a real thing that provides a lot of value to society on a long time horizon. And then after that, found out about Ethereum, was like, realized smart contracts are basically like vending machines on the internet and they don't exist yet. And there's not a good way to build that. Ethereum's a solution. So I kind of like the ideals of it.
Yeah.
And then the tech side was exciting. I think that if you want to make a high impact early on, like you kind of have to go to a newer industry where there's quick growth.
Yeah.
Because quick growth creates like all opportunity, right? There's not a place where, like if you go into investment banking, right before you're actually making important decisions and doing things that have impact, there's like a 20-year path. In new industries that are just being created or figured out for the first time, if you have a good idea and build it, like you're 1 year away from having impact. So that was exciting. So it seemed like a good industry. I like the ideals of it. It kind of made sense to me from a tech perspective why it should work.
Right. So you have these friends that second degree friends, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you, what happens next? Who brings you in?
So one of them, fun fact, two of them at this point was actually Nick Carter and Matt Walsh, who now I'm really close with. They had like just started Castle Island at that point. Mike Zinneman was actually the guy who introduced me to them. So basically my plan was like, all right, talk to people. Hopefully they will lead to a job. And then it kind of just ended up working like that, right? So I talked to Mike. He ended up connecting me with Dan, who runs CMS Holdings. I pitched him on like just doing work for free as an intern. I was like, I'm excited about this. I'm going to be learning and studying it anyways. So basically I pitched Dan on, hey, I'm going to be learning about this, creating work, doing research anyways. If you point the finger at what you're interested in, I'll probably learn more because you know what's interesting better than I do, and I'll create the work for you for free.
Right.
So like really, I try to frame it as like there's no reason he should say no. So I kind of got my foot in the door through that, got an internship at CMS. Um,
What were you doing? How did you build this role?
yep, so CMS is a prop shop, so it's just partner capital. They have like an actively traded hedge fund side, which is liquid strategies, and then venture investment. So I was doing research on the venture team.
Research, okay.
Um, so trying to due diligence that would inform venture investment decisions. Um,
What
so yeah,
year was this?
this is 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, basically got an internship there. I'd actually already accepted a position to do consulting for after school.
Okay.
Dan, after like 2 weeks of my internship, was like, "Hey, do you really want to do consulting?" I was like, "Not really." He's like, "All right, cool. You come work here full time."
Okay.
So I was an intern. That was kind of what created the Twitter side, legitimately doing intern things, and then got a job working full time. And yeah, worked at CMS for like just under 3 years.
Oh, that was a long time.
Yeah, yeah, I was there for quite a while. I mean, I loved it, right? Like I wanted to work in emerging tech. I thought startups were very interesting in general. I thought that like at that point with what tech was doing, I was like, it makes sense that more and more startups will get created and they'll have higher and higher impact because of like the way that software interacts with our world now. And so I knew I wanted to work in that field. So getting to basically go directly into venture investing with like a small team, awesome culture, like super fun, getting to shit post on Twitter while also like making investment decisions was, yeah, really cool. I feel like I learned a ton very quickly and that kind of set up like
Yeah.
everything else.
How did that shape you and prepare you for what happens next?
Yeah, so yeah, I worked at CMS doing venture investing, and then now I've been at Monad for coming up on 2 years. Um, I like to joke that like at CMS, my job was to venture invest into crypto startups and shitpost on Twitter. And then at Monad, my job is basically to invest time, energy, resources into teams that are building on Monad. So a lot of parallels, and then also shitpost on Twitter, but just from the Monad main account, not from like my own account.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of overlap. I think like the skill sets in crypto tend to like something that you learn at one company like translates very well to really doing anything that you want in the space. They're not super differentiated. Like it's really what do you think about certain things? How high is your conviction? What people do you know? And do you know the right teams that can actually pull off ideas that are exciting?
Monad has such a good community. It's really nice to watch, honestly. And I think people are genuinely excited to be part of it as well. Like you can really see it. How did that come about?
Yeah, so in late 2022, well, so Monad had done a fundraise around April of 2022. There were angels and uh, like VC firms. And so I had done an initial angel investment in the first round of Monad. So I was familiar with the team, familiar with the product. In late 2022, Keone basically pinged the angels looking for someone to like help lead on the growth side. Like at this point, Monad is three co-founders, maybe four or five engineers, no one doing anything outside of actually building the chain itself.
Right.
So started helping out, building out like the initial scope for what marketing and community could look like. Soon after that, maybe a month after, we hired Bill Monday, who's now the head of community at Monad. And for a long time, it was basically Keone, Bill Monday, and I just like sitting on calls, trying to figure out how to build community, what good marketing looks like, trying ideas. And yeah, I think we just spent much more time thinking about community, what it should look like. We knew it was important in a fundamental, like at the fundamental level for Monad, it would be important to have a lot of people that were excited about it, right? It attracts developers, it attracts investment opportunities, kind of community is the heartbeat of a lot of things that would push this engine of Monad forward. And
Absolutely.
so we knew it was important, so we just spent like way more time than any team that I know of thinking through how should you build community, what's important. And so Bill Monday and I basically just tried a bunch of things for like 6 months.
Okay.
A lot of them didn't work. A few of them did and ended up getting like good sticky traction. And
What's
then
some of the things that didn't work?
didn't work. Um, I'll frame it this way. The stage that your community at is very, very important to inform what you should be doing. So if you have a community of 5,000 people, the things that you need to do to grow it are very different from growing a community if you're at 100,000. And so a lot of people look at good communities and they just try to copy what that team is doing and they're just way off on the stage. So like when you're at 5,000 people, it's extremely important to talk one-on-one to like anyone who's showing remote interest, encourage more engagement, like try to build connections with them. It's very hard to do that at 300,000. I think we're around like 400,000 in the Discord now. Like you just can't have 400,000 one-on-one connections. But so yeah, early on it was like mostly the one-on-one conversations, DMs with people that were excited, figuring out why, figuring out their talents and how to highlight them was yeah, really the key to like bootstrapping the early days.
I feel like it grew really fast. Like, what's a realistic time frame for someone that is trying to mimic the same?
Yeah, I think people look at Monad now and then they like when you look back over 2 years, it feels very quickly, or it feels very quick to talk about what happened. When you're doing it for 2 years, it actually feels very slow, right? So I would say like the first 6 months was actually extremely slow.
Yeah.
We knew we had a lot of people that had high potential, but there was not a lot of people that cared about that group.
Right.
And so there was like 6 months of really building the fundamental strategies, trying to get that core group of super fans. The next 6 months, we saw a decent amount of growth and traction. So everything started to scale up, maybe got like 10 times bigger. And then the most recent 6 months, things have just kind of gone like hyperbolic, right? The amount of energy and effort is probably 10,000x what it used to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's, you have to make sure that you are considerate of what stage you're in for like whatever strategy you're doing to grow community or create your marketing. But if you do it, right, like now we get to sit on a podcast and be like, oh, it grew so quickly.
It grew so quickly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess, yeah, I mean, it also starts from the point of where you become aware, from my perspective. You think like it's sort of like slow in the beginning and then it sort of like goes like exponent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the big things that mattered for growing the Monad community, like a lot of the things that we were doing was helpful. We were setting a stage, facilitating good conversation. But like narrative in crypto dominates, right? Like whatever people are saying about different tech stacks is extremely important for who cares. And so like November of 2023, parallel EVM became this thing that was like 2% of the people in crypto cared about to like all of a sudden 80% of the people in crypto cared about it. Like this was the thing that people were excited about. And so when that kind of switched and people realized this was a really big unlock for crypto, that threw a ton of energy at Monad. And from there, right, it's like if you get shot with a bunch of energy, right, you can either fumble it and let it go to waste, or you can direct it into something productive. And so I think like the community team, like the growth team in general, did a pretty good job of capturing that energy, creating something productive, and that's like really what the Monad community is today.
So 2 years ago, you sort of test things, you come up with a plan, and you start seeing what works, and you take what works, and you sort of like start reiterating it. Would you do the same thing if it was today? Like imagine if you take a new company, would you do the same thing, or would it have to inevitably be adapted to today?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of people don't even know to ask that question, right? They just try to copy what has worked in the past. I think crypto specifically, if you're the first person to do something and it works really well, and then immediately after you get like 10 or more projects, copy it. And it never, like, if you create the playbook,
Yeah.
you're in a very good spot. If you're following someone else's playbook, you're in a very bad spot, honestly. Like, forking someone else's strategy just never works. So I think if we were to do it again today, there'd be a lot of overlap between like the strategies, what we would do to grow in the early days. But it actually would probably look pretty different, right? People care about different things now than they did 2 years ago. Community has evolved, right? Like, community used to be something that was kind of this random natural byproduct of people shipping a product
Yeah.
that crypto is excited about. Now it's like, when VCs are diligencing a project, it's like one of the four main verticals. They're like, do I believe that this team can actually build a community? So it went from this thing that kind of existed in the background to like extremely important upfront. And I think Monad pushed the needle on that a bit. There are a bunch of other projects that have done a good job as well. But yeah, I think you need to just take what the inputs are of the market and what people care about, and then create your strategy from there. So like the inputs would be slightly different because the market's different, crypto in general is different. But there would be a lot of overlap, right? Like, it's obviously still a good strategy to talk to people one-on-one in the bootstrapping days. It is a good strategy. Like 2 years ago, no one was really personality posting off of their main account. Like,
Right.
we really started pushing that at Monad, and it worked very well. Now it's almost like if you're not doing that, you're wasting time, you're losing attention. It's become like the norm. So
I think one of the most interesting things for people watching would be to understand how they go from the 0 to 1, like how they bring in like the first few people. How do you target them? How do you find them?
yeah, I think it's one thing to keep in mind is that it's much messier when you're doing it than explaining, oh, 6 months ago, this is what we did and it worked, right? When you're actually doing it on a day-to-day, it feels like you're not really getting anywhere. Every once in a while, you get a lucky break, and then you try to work with that. But yeah, I would say in general, 0 to 1 on community, you'll likely have a few people who naturally are excited about the project, right? Not 400,000, but you might have like, 40 or even 4, right? Like a small number of people that gravitate, it makes sense to them, and they want to get involved. Like I've said before on this, right? Like, talk to those people one-on-one, make sure that they feel like that community is their home, and make sure that they see a path towards like leadership and status within the community if it grows, right? Like, community members are making a bet on the underlying product and the team's ability to create a larger community, right? Like, the same way that we look at, say, meme coins, we're like, all right, I think this is a good meme coin. I think other people care about it, so I'm going to speculate that it will be important in the future, so I'm going to buy it now. Community members do that with projects, right? They look, they're like, all right, does this have potential to actually capture attention? Do I like it? Is the team good there? And if all of their boxes are checked, they're willing to put time and energy into the community to like make it better. One of the things that helps that is like, if you have the people who are creating it talk to the community, it goes a long way, because most projects don't do that. Like, early days, Keone was one-on-one DMing a ton of community members. Like, you do not see CEOs of companies that there's a lot of excitement about just talking one-on-one to someone who's like creating memes in the Discord.
Yeah.
And it wasn't super clear at that point that was like a good use of time.
Yeah.
But I think in hindsight, it was honestly one of the most powerful things that like created what the Mana community is today, right? Like, an example of that mindset being applied today, right? Like Vietnads, which is our Vietnam community, through this massive in-person event in Vietnam. Like, Monad was not, the team did not organize anything, right? The community self-organized through this large event and then told the team that they were doing it. So like, when Keone heard, he booked a flight to fly from New York to Vietnam on Thursday just to be there for the community, because he thought it would help if, like, he wanted to meet the members, and like, it also signals that like, hey, I deeply care about what's going on. Like, I love this, thank you guys, and like, I want to be a part of it if you are going to do IRL events. So like, he flew out on Thursday, was there for the event on Friday, and then flew home on Saturday. So yeah, I think a lot of people would just see that as like, oh, this might be a waste of time, or maybe there's other more important things to be doing. Um, but I think you'll look back and say, 700 people that were there, Keone flying in signals that this is something we will continue to invest in, that we care deeply about. And that has a lot of like positive compounding interest to, people spending their time and energy on Monad and like being a part of the community, building, creating, growing with everyone in there.
Yeah, part of the community dynamic, it's a little bit more natural to remain engaging compared to say like an audience that is just watching. There's more to do. There's more ways to feel like they belong. How do you keep like the sort of like the momentum, like the wheel going? Because obviously, like some people might get busy with their lives, something might happen, maybe they lose interest. How do you keep this number of like what in a product would be like the active users, like the active members of this community, super engaged, and you don't that number sort of like doesn't drop enough so that everyone disengages?
Yeah. Yeah, maintaining engagement is like everything for the community. Um, I think, again, it's stage dependent, right? What you're going to do with 10,000 members is different from 400,000. But yeah, we really see on the community front, we see our job as facilitating positive interactions. Like, I'll think about it as like, you go out to recess, right? And there's 200 kids out there playing. If they just go out and there's nothing, right? There's no jungle gym or soccer field or anything.
Yeah.
They're gonna figure out random stuff to do, but like they're kind of just hanging out there. If you create a soccer field and a jungle gym and they see like, all right, there's organization, there's structure, like we have games to play with each other, they're gonna have way more fun. And so I kind of see on the community front, our job is to like create the soccer field, create the jungle gym, the basketball court, like have the organization to like let them basically build their own adventure.
Yeah.
And then from there, right, we're just basically just facilitating positive interaction within those games that we're creating. Um, yeah, I think the recess analogy
That is
is
really
really
good
yeah.
analogy. So for you, what is next? What are you trying to achieve in the next, say, like year?
Yeah. So I think right now we're in like a deep preparation phase. We've built a very strong community. There's a lot of people that are excited about Monad's launch. I think building the ecosystem is like hands down number one most important thing for the next year. It's strange because there's nothing like direct that I can do to build the eco. It's similar to the community, right? Like create organization structure, help founders find good ideas that they're excited about, and then help them like achieve success. So I think that getting like great developers building novel use cases that were impossible before Monad existed and now will be possible and important post Monad launch is like that's kind of my North Star for the next year, right? Like helping really smart, talented developers create those products that's the main goal for the next year.
Do we have a date for when Monad is launching?
Well, James, our CTO, is sitting right here. Um, no, I think that a lot of the optimizations and improvements have never been done before, right? There's like 4 key improvements, and like any of them would be meaningful for a project to create on their own. Like we're doing all of them.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of research, time spent building and optimizing. Yeah, I think Monad's private testnet is live right now. There are a handful of apps that are currently live on it, kicking the tires, making sure their app functions correctly. We'll look to onboard that to like 100 apps over the next month or two.
Okay.
And then I think public testnet launch is going to be. It should be a moment where people kind of have this idea of Monad. They're like, all right, it's exciting. It should be really performant, but like I can't use it, so I don't really know what to think about it.
Okay.
Once they actually come on and use it and see what Monad feels like from a user perspective, I think it will become much more obvious what this is going to be. And there will be like a large inflow of developer talent, like probably tweets and attention shot at Monad around public testnet launch. And then basically it's, figuring out if there are any bugs or things to stabilize before mainnet launch. There's, there will likely be a large amount of like capital and other things at stake upon Monad's launch. So like you got to make sure that everything is secure and you're 100% confident that you're ready to go. So yeah, I think public testnet launch will be relatively soon. And then once everything seems stable enough to launch mainnet, then Monad will kind of go live and have its big bang moment.
Absolutely. Sounds exciting. For everyone watching, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm personally at Intern on Twitter. You can check out Monad. It's at monad_XYZ. Join the Discord, see what the community's up to. They're probably making jokes and having fun. Yeah.
Great. Kevin, thank you.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a hive.
You know we do not understand that we do not want to have. Ladies and gentlemen.
Get back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.